Hello and welcome to today's video on the Sicilian Najdorf. We continue our opening series today. And of course, we have to talk about the Najdorf, right? The openings of the champions. Such a fighting opening out there. All the great world champions took it with great success. Today, I will show you the gist and the spirit of the Najdorf defense. I will show you thematic ideas, plans, and what kind of players suit from playing the Najdorf. I will show you the model games from chess history that every chess enthusiast should know. We will see Kasparov, Fischer, Judith Polgar's games, Anand's games, and at the end, I will give you a general overview what an opening Najdorf is, and then you will decide whether it suits your style as a player, whether you find it exciting to try in your games. Not so much about memorization today, but about understanding the essence and the philosophy of the opening. So what is the Najdorf defense? It's characterized by the move a6 in the Sicilian defense. How did it start? Let's go back to the beginning, folks. e4, c5, the Sicilian defense, right? The very sharp counter-attacking opening for black. d6, takes, knight f6, knight c3, and here black goes a6, and this creates the Najdorf variation of the Sicilian defense. Now, what's the point of a6? Obviously, right, we are stopping bishop b5 business. It looks like an unprincipled opening move, right? We are making a pawn move in the opening. Why? Well, it all connects to our general strategy in the middle game, in this pawn structure. In fact, if you go to the very beginning and ask yourself, what is going on here? Black, by playing c5, after d4, taking on d4, black is actually gaining the central pawn majority. Let's discuss, what is going on in the Najdorf. What are black's trumps, for example? Because Najdorf also gives black so many long-term positional advantages. It's a very sound opening also positionally. It's not like, we are burning the bridges. We also have so many great chances in the end games and so on. I will also talk about this in today's video, right? Black is extra pawn in the center, but what are the defects for black? Obviously, right? We need to spend time to get our king into safety, and white is better developed right now because white already had two pieces out, and it's white's turn again, right? White is the central pawn on e4, so these are the things that are working for white in this structure in general, but never forget black's long-term trumps in this structure. Let's start from a positional treatment, in fact. That's a game of Robert James Fischer with the black pieces. He was a great Sicilian Najdorf player. I learned tremendously from Fischer as I was taking the Najdorf, and I'm sure you can also do the same. In this game, he's playing against Herman Pilnik with the white pieces. So white chooses a very, let's say, quiet and positional and strategic treatment of bishop e2. Later on today, we will see so many crazy attempts from white. White can throw a kitchen towel at us, and that's exactly why Najdorf requires a little bit of more memorization than the Karjakin, which I showed you before, folks. Okay, bishop e2 is much more positional. He wants to simply go, castle short and gain space in the king side with f4. e5 characterizes our typical Najdorf pawn structure. So when you talk about typical Najdorf structure, you talk about the pawn on e5 actually, right? So this e5 and d6 duo characterizes the Najdorf. Black gives himself this d5 weak square, but black's point is that yes, I have a central pawn on e5, which is giving me an advantage. I have pawn majority in the center, and I will solve my problems accordingly. I will play bishop e6, for example, to cover my weak spots. In this game, Fischer chooses this standard setup of castle short, and then the game goes to positional and more quiet grounds. Please check this game also in terms of weakness awareness and the attack on the queen side, which will be conducted by black very, very soon, folks. I will stop the video in key moments, by the way, and I will ask you to find a plan. That's the structure of the series, by the way. I will be asking you questions, and you will try to identify whether you could find those moves in your games, which means whether the opening suits you as a player. b5. Well, typical Najdorf idea, right? We are having pressure on the queen side on the semi-open file, and this way we're actually even threatening b4 followed by queen takes c2, for example, right? We have good play as black on the queen side. in the structure. Knight b6, what's the point? Fischer wants to go knight c4 or knight a4 and create further targets on the queen side. Queen f2, and here comes the first interesting moment in the game. Fischer goes rook b8. Can you tell me what's the point behind this move, folks? I want you to look at long term. Which plan, for example, which target is black aiming with this move? Congratulations, black is actually finding that b2 weakness, and black's plan is to simply say, you know what, my knight is either going here or here, and after takes, I want to simply open up the b file for my rook and put pressure on your pawn on b2. That's exactly what I meant by positional opening. It's an extremely sound opening from positional perspective. We have long-term weaknesses to attack and slowly maneuver our pieces on the queen side. Okay, so after bishop b6, well, the point was this: if he doesn't take the knight, then knight a4 is so strong, right? Hitting the pawn on b2, putting pressure over here, and after takes, the b2 pawn is collapsing. And now we also understand, right, why Fischer moved the rook to b8 a couple of moves ago. Beautiful strategic moves. So after rook b8, in fact, white took the knight, but this gives black a bishop pair and great dark square control, knight e5. You can take both ways, by the way. This is a very typical pattern in Najdorf to know. They at some point can move the knight to d5. Here, Fischer, a bishop pair lover. Of course, Fischer keeps the bishop pair on the board. Now the weak square has been filled by a pawn. That's a good thing for black, right? So now there is no more an issue for black on that square. And black says, you know what? You have long-term weaknesses on the queen side, and I have the bishop pair, and I will simply put pressure on you. f4, how should we react? This bishop is sleeping, so Fischer goes, thank you so much. Bishop f6. If you ever take, my bishop will activate. And you see, right now, black is actually the one who is having long-term cards. All the positional cards and games are going to be great for black. So this was a much more positional treatment. And I will actually ask you one more question here. Would you, for example, consider making a move like g6 in this position? Because maybe the knight will actually jump to f5. Fischer says yes, because his king is so safe. Fischer has no phantom fears, right? He simply goes g6, stops knight f5, and since he has the bishop pair, unopposed bishop on the dark squares, the king is very, very secure on g8. No phantom fears. And after a3, you tell me the plan, folks. You stop the video and you tell me the plan for black. Yes, in my strategy series on YouTube, I talk about the minority attack. And here we see the minority attack in action. Textbook example of minority attack. Fischer simply wants to go b4 and create a target on the queen side. It's simple chess, folks. Beautiful positional treatment on the queen side. Again, I should mention this over and over again. Najdorf is a very positionally very sound opening b4, and no matter what happens, white needs to give us a target on the queen side. He tried to take with the c pawn and activate the rook on the c file, but Fischer's just activated the queen itself. Knight c6 is a good move. White is fighting very well actually in this game. But Fischer first of all creates a target on a3. You see, the target on a3. This pawn is also weak, by the way. So structurally, black is already better, and simply puts pressure on the pawn on a3. And look at this transformation. In this endgame, black is a much better pawn structure. White has all these big pawns. Despite this pawn has become a pass pawn, black's chances are preferable in this endgame. And look how slowly Fischer activates the pieces. Bishop f5, g4, and here comes the question. Bishop b4, bishop f3. Should we exchange the bishops or should we keep the bishops on the board? You tell me. You form a plan. Fischer's move is great. Bishop d3, hitting the rook, follow it up with e4. Black obtains a crashing position. Also, rook a3s are coming, and it's already too late for white. Well, d6, we should always worry about the opponent's ideas. We should always check them. So, for example, my question is this: can you take the rook on f1? Please stop the video. No, right? Because the real threat is this. This is the real threat you're facing. d7 followed by rook c8, so we should be careful. So which move did Fischer play? Yes, rook d8, neutralizing white's only counterplay and basically winning a pawn. And after this, rook f6. The end is very near actually, right? The white king is not safe at all. After rook e3, you tell me the winning tactic. It's black to move and win. Beautiful. Nice start. Bishop e4. Beautiful. After rook f7, you tell me the finisher. Bam! Fischer plays rook f2 and white resigned. A beautiful game, a beautiful finish because the rook will be captured on the next move. It's pinned. Beautiful piece activity in the end. A brief recap. Two key elements from this game is this, right? Look how black created a weakness on b2, weakness awareness. He forms a plan on the queen side. And also around here, right? The minority attack was working like charm in this position. a5 and b4, the minority attack. So this is the positional spirit and the judgment in the Najdorf, right, that you should be aware of. These are one of our typical plans. Lots of endgames are good for us. Despite this, oh, reputation, oh, Najdorf is so crazy, oh, your king will be always insecure and you must be an insane player to take it. Just look at this solidity, positional solidity that presents black in this opening. That's why champions took it, because it gives us great fighting chances, but also it's a very sound opening. Another game of Fischer, Unzicker versus Fischer, a Najdorf chess classic. A very typical Najdorf pawn structure again, e5, d6 pawns, and there's a big square on d5. Bishop versus knight, a typical imbalance, by the way. It's black to play, folks. I want you to stop the video and find a great move / plan for black. How would you treat this position with black pieces? Obviously, you must do something about this rook on a8. So, where should the rook move in this position? That's my question to you. Congratulations if you found Fischer's move rook a4. A great multi-purpose move this is, right? Putting pressure on e4, stopping this knight to move because rook d4s are coming. And also, right, if you ever take my rook, then I want to create a target on b2 and exploit that directly. To rook a4, he couldn't take on a4, right? Because after the knight moves, I take on b2 and the whole structure is collapsing for white. Rook a4, and Fischer is, of course, challenging slowly the a-file, putting more pressure on the a-file, and doesn't concede the file to white. So c3 happens in the actual game. Queen a6, beautiful, right? Intensifying the pressure on the a-file and exchanging on our own terms. h3. It's very hard for white actually to find a plan, surprising in this position. Notice that there are several ideas, ideas like rook a2 at some point, rook c8 or rook a8. Black can improve its position, while this knight on b3 is really misplaced in this position. After h3, Fischer makes, first of all, an improving move, rook c8. Perhaps this rook is going to c4 and putting pressure on the weakness on e4. Typical weak pawn by white in the structure, a backward pawn. And after rook e1 comes this beautiful luft. We will see the point of this move. Fischer is creating a luft for the king. And then comes the bishop activation, because that was our worst place piece, right? Maybe some ideas like this in the future. g3, well, he was scared about bishop f4, but g3 is actually weakening the king even more, right? It's a very, very committal move. And can you guess Fischer's next move after this? Queen a7, king g2. I want you to stop the video and find Fischer's move. Beautiful, folks. Rook a2, weakness awareness. He's putting pressure on b2, and suddenly the white king is not feeling any safe. The queen and rook, and even this rook invasion is actually upcoming. Even rook c3 ideas in the air right now. So white needs to be so careful. In fact, there is no defense for white. What else? Well, if you take my rook, then queen takes a2, right? And things are collapsing on the queen side. Look at this. Plus rook c3 ideas are in the air. Rook e2, rook c3. Disaster. So after this, he plays king f1, but rook takes c3 by Fischer. Beautiful finish, right? It's a beautiful finish. If you take my rook, then queen f2 mate. Amazing. And if you don't take my rook, I mean, what can you do, right? If you take on a2, comes this check, Zwischen check, and then takes, and everything's just collapsing for white. Now we understand the point, right, of the luft on h6. Black king is so safe, and white king will be mated. So this was a beautiful Najdorf chess classic again. You should really, really study your games like this with such middle game ideas and plans. And here, for example, if you go back to this position, right, this really signifies to us what Najdorf presents. It's about weakness awareness. It's about hitting targets like this, c2, b2, and even e4 in this position. You should really, really keep an eye on those weaknesses. This will always give you great ideas in the middle game. So much about positional chess. Let's go and see an amazingly sharp, dynamic, attacking, crazy, pawn storm Najdorf game, because I know that you're searching for that. It's a game of Vishy Anand, an amazing player, a beautiful attacking, dynamic player. And in this game, it's one of his best games in his career. against the Sergei Karjakin. Again, in this case, white goes bishop e3. This signals a sharper treatment. English attack is ensuing. Just check this out. English attack is signified by this pawn duo and follow it up with g4, h4, g5, h5 pawn storm. White wants to simply castle long and attack us on the king side. So this will already be a very, very sharp middle game. We should really get prepared, get ready for it. And Najdorf players, you should know your model games. You should know your basic plans. This will be a tempo game. This will be a very sharp attacking game. You should be ready for it. Can you see yourself playing those positions with the black pieces, where every single tempo is crucial and a single slip can lead to a disaster? For example, here, do you know the best move for black? And here, yes, we need some memorization in those crazy sharp lines. B4 is the main line, and after knight e2, you tell me. Well, first of all, if you take on f6, then this is the point of black, right? Will be a great position for black. Black has no big worries. So after b4, knight e2, you tell me the next move. Knight e8, f4. The storm is coming on the king side. Every single tempo is crucial. Black goes a5. You see, if you don't know this theory, it's very difficult for you to find these moves over the board, right? So it's good to know some basic ideas. Here, for example, what is the best move for white? Crazy looking knight d4. Amazing. Because if he takes here, right, just to show you, a takes b3, takes, and black queen. So after the main line, knight d4, black takes a knight, and after takes, it appears that this bishop would be lost. Plus, white actually threatens the move queen c6, so white will get the piece back. You see how dynamical this is? Every single tempo is crucial, and the main line for black is the crazy looking b3. I still remember those days where I was learning this theory as in my 20s. I was like, oh my god, I mean, come on, how can they memorize and remember and execute all these moves, right? I was very confused analyzing these moves actually. But once you look deeper, the essence is of course timing here, taking a step back, right? Kings on opposite flanks, pawn storms, it's all about time, it's all about quality rather than material, right? So you should be prepared for such middle game play, folks. After b3, the only move for black, in fact, king b1, again, it's just insane, because if you take on b3 with the pawn, then this is not good because the bishop takes, a takes, knight takes, and queen b8, and black has good play on the queen side. So after b3, king b1, here comes my question. Should black take on c2 or a2 in this position? I'm testing your general skills of an attack and executing pawn storms. There's only one good move here for black. Yes, c takes b3 is a good move because this way you're keeping lines open on the queen side and you give yourself more choices. If you take on a2, you tell me what the white king will do. Instructive. Yes, he goes a1, and this king is so secure because your own pawn is acting like an umbrella, like a shield. Instructive. So these ideas should be known also in the Najdorf as you're playing these very sharp pawn storm positions. This would not be great for black because if you go a3, of course you will go b3, and how can you attack the white king on a1, right? Your own pawns are blocking your pieces. Beautiful. So that's exactly why after this sequence, black takes on c2 in the actual game. Takes back, and here, can you see the move? Bishop b3. Can you see yourself memorizing and remembering those moves, folks? Please ask yourself these questions. Bishop b3 is the main line because this way, right? Black is giving the piece back, but opening up lines, and b3 pawn is actually will be a huge pawn for black. This pawn will actually strengthen our attack, and the white king is not secure as in the other line. I shall show you, folks. Here, knight e5, improving the knight. h4, white storm is going on. Rook a5, a multi-purpose move, you might say. Introducing queen a8 ideas, right? And also, let's say, taking away side squares from the white pieces. It's a beautiful move. Also stopping queen d5 ideas. Look how sharp this game is. Queen a8, nice. Putting pressure on the knight, also directly on the pawn on a4. Look how Anand is treating this position. It's still, by the way, theory. And bishop g2 is an inaccuracy because it actually loses control of c4. And now you tell me Anand's next move. Maybe some of you memorize and remember this game. If you do, you're a great player. You're a great Najdorf player. And please take your time. Please understand the essence of this position. It's totally about pawn storm. If you keep on waiting, white will crash you on the king side with moves like f6, right? He will open up lines on the king side and will crash your king. So timing is of essence here. You must only look at those dynamical moves here, friends. Please tell me a good looking idea for black. Folks, Anand played the amazing looking knight e7. This move still impresses me a lot when I look at this game. Oh my god. He's not only sacrificing the knight, but he will also sacrifice the bishop. It's a two-piece sacrifice for a gain of a single tempo. Because black then goes knight c4 and says, you know what? Right now I have 4 attackers against 1 defender on the king side. And this position is totally about timing and attack. And look how he treated this position. Look how he changed the picture drastically. Again, if black keeps on waiting here, as mentioned, right? If black keeps on waiting in this position, f6 is coming. So this is a beautiful Najdorf spirit for us. Moves like knight c7 and this entire line should really excite you here. Obviously, this knight cannot be captured because of rook a1 check and things are falling apart for whites. But white player in the actual game, he finds a good resource, g6. And this was my point. One single slip and you can lose any position in Najdorf. It's a crazy sharp Najdorf middle game. Not every single Najdorf games, of course, but in a position like this, extremely sharp pawn storm positions, every single move is crucial. So, can you please stop the video and tell me how black should treat this position after g6? Congratulations if you found Anand's move h takes g6, the only move that wins the game for black. This, and you tell me the next move. Yes, now we can take. Now we can take and go for the kill because g takes f7 is not going to be dangerous for us. You tell me the next move for black. Look how deep the calculation goes. After king h7, there is no clear check for white, right? There is no immediate check. So after king h7, there is no direct check for white except this move. But black simply recaptured the knight and there's a huge threat that is waiting the white king. So white had to give up the queen in the actual game, but Anand goes for a direct mating sequence in this position. Just amazing. Just an amazing game, folks. And finishes the game like this. Oh my god. So just to go back and to see what really happened in this game very quickly. You know, Najdorf is this opening that you have no full control, obviously. White can, for example, play bishop e3. They can choose bishop g5 line, for example, right? So in this case, we have not much control on exactly which variation we'll get. So we have to also prepare ourselves, right, in handling some crazy looking middle game positions as well. Because white can totally throw the kitchen sink at us with this English stack formation, g4, h4, and we have to go for active counterattack. And so this was Anand's novelty in this position to find knight c7, which is a game winner, by the way. And this is the thing in Najdorf. A single move can change the entire evaluation. It's so sharp, it's so concrete in this kind of middle game position with pawn storms. So you should really get yourself ready, either by knowing your theory or really have a great sense of dynamics, right? Knowing exactly when to sacrifice. For example, here, in hindsight, the best move for white would be to play f6, right? Because he's opening up lines on the king side. He's accelerating his attack. Single pawn is nothing in a position like this, right? But it's about piece activity and coordination and so on. So this will be a best variation for white, also for the white's perspective, right? So you should be really having this great sense of timing and be willing to sacrifice material for your attacking chances. Going back to knight e7, you know, they say chess is a tragedy of a single tempo. It's perfectly illustrated by this. Black is sacrificing 2 pieces, but gains a crucial tempo after knight c4, and black's attack is landing first on the queen side. Amazing, beautiful link between material and time in chess. And you can also, right, by playing Najdorf, you can actually improve in this beautiful skill of dynamics and understand the trade-offs between material and coordination and timing in chess, which will definitely carry over to other parts of your game, right? If you internalize these lessons from the Najdorf, for example, you can apply it to different openings and structures, folks. Going back to this crazy position, I didn't tell you that after g6, if black takes on g6 with f-pawn, it's white who is winning. You know, h takes g6 wins for black, but f takes g6 wins for white. this is the point that makes Najdorf an amazing opening, because this allows f6. Suddenly there's a huge queen takes g7 mate threat on the board, and after takes, white can play like this, and suddenly bishop a6 is coming, and it's white who is creating this huge mate in one threat, which black must react, because right now you have no clear check to mate the white king. So black needs to play passively, and white's attack is raging. The bishop is opened up, and after you take on g2 comes this amazingly beautiful queen c8 followed by queen f8 mate. Oh my god. Right? I'm showing you this to also show you, oh boy, every single tempo is crucial. So you better know your openings, so you have enough time in these crazy middle game positions for real calculation, right? Because this moment like this, you cannot rely purely on your intuition. You need to calculate move by move by looking at the opponent's resources and by being precise, right? So this might not favor so many players. I can feel that. But again, if the idea is for long-term growth in one's chess, you can still take the Najdorf. It's positionally sound, and you can experiment. You can actually, get joy in playing such positions, which I'm sure will excite many of you. Such a position, right? Oh my god, looks beautiful, so rich in terms of calculation, in terms of counterplays and resources and so on, that you can also really improve your skill of concrete calculation. Another great world champion, Garry Kasparov, took the Najdorf, and I want to show you one of his games against Alexander Grischuk here. So Kasparov was a great Najdorf fan. He started with the Karjakin and then later switched to Najdorf. Right, it's with the style, dynamics, calculation, precision, all these things that signify Garry, counterattack. He was actually a great practitioner of the Najdorf. He actually liked to play this e6 structure with Najdorf, right? Remember, e5 was the main Najdorf structure, but you can also play e6. This is actually called the Scheveningen pawn structure, or Scheveningen, or I think Dutch people will correct me here. Sorry for butchering that town, Scheveningen. Right? So these two pawns in the center, which actually increases our flexibility in the center. Remember, black has an extra pawn in the center. That's actually black's advantage, long-term advantage. And here we can actually make use of that by playing like this. Again, white has a better development, so black needs to be careful. But if you know your stuff, if you know your theory, you'll be fine. You'll be fine around the structures. Black is very flexible. b5 signifies bishop b7 followed by b4 at some point. And white, again, gets this beautifully dangerous English attack formation, and he wants to also attack and kill us on the king side. This will be a very sharp battle. Kasparov doesn't want to give any hook pawn to white without h6, so he actually wants to transfer his knight to b6. Again, we are following theory. There are so many moves and games from the structure. Kasparov plays knight e7. Very quickly, this is our basic setup in the Scheveningen, by the way, in Najdorf. This will be a very sharp battle as well. Our king is in the center. We need time to develop the king side, but Garry says its central extra pawn is giving enough solidity to black. So black king is actually safe for the moment in the center of the board, but things will be very direct and sharp. Can you tell me, for example, what was the threat after rook c8? Black's last one was just rook c8, and white played knight e2. If white doesn't play knight e2, if white only focuses on the on-plan with h4, can you tell me the typical stock standard Najdorf idea? Yes, exchange sacrifice, rook takes c3. Every Najdorf schoolboy should know this idea by heart, right? By sacrificing an exchange, black is destroying the pawn cover around the white king. Our pieces start targeting those queenside weaknesses. And for example, d5 opens up this guy as well, and the white king is not feeling any secure. Practically, it's much easier to play with black. It's fun to play with black, and it's good that actually I show you this very typical middle game idea in the Najdorf. So Grischuk, of course, doesn't allow that. So Kasparov plays like this. Again, we are following theory. It's move 13 so far, and there are so many games from this position, and that again makes Najdorf a very theoretically heavy line. But again, there are so many recurring patterns, right? Like this rook c8 idea, for example, open file pressure, knights are going to a4 and c5, the bishop belongs to b7 in those structures. So there are also like so many recurring themes. For example, if I ask you to tell me a typical idea, middle game idea for black in this position, what will you say? Yes, d5 pawn break. I'm coming there soon, folks. This is one of our main pawn breaks in the Najdorf Sicilian. What does this move do? Well, a couple of reasons. We activate the bishop. We also want to improve this bishop, right? So again, pawns helping the pieces. Well, our king is in the center. We are still playing d5. How come? Again, look, they cannot attack the black king in the center. It's impossible for white to open up the e-file and put pressure there directly. It will be a very concrete battle. And Grischuk plays e5. Interesting, a typical reaction. Because if you take on the e5, I will just recapture my bishop and activate my guy. Gary takes on e5. And the typical way for white to react is bishop f4, which was the best move here actually, which was not happening in the game. And white should have played like this because here white is gaining time, you see. White is gaining time in its position to slowly attack us on the king side. So this will be, let's say, a best continuation for white. Very sharp battle, very unclear. In the actual game, after queen takes e5, white plays f4, queen d6, g5, bishop e7, h5. And here again, right, at the cost of a pawn, white improves his king side play. Pawn storm is raging, and black must be careful because black is a king in the center. So should black castle short or should black do another move? Now I'm testing your sense of danger, folks. Do you think it's safe for the black king to castle short in this position? The answer is no, because if you castle short, then comes so many moves. There are even moves like bishop h7, for example, here, but f5 is also a very human move to me. And, you know, things are opening up on the king side, and you have to be so careful about your king safety. You know, there are ideas like f6, g6, h6, all these moves are coming, and white king has no hook pawn on the queen side that we can directly exploit. So this will be so dangerous for black. That's why Gary plays f5 himself, right? Interesting. It looks dangerous as well to play this move, but he plays it anyways because that's a way to halt the advance of the f-pawn, okay? Can you, for example, guess what white should have played in this position? Because Grischuk, after f5, he moved knight f3, but he actually missed a much stronger idea in this position. Bam! Bishop takes f5. A typical piece sacrifice for, well, more than 2 pawns, because in this position, white will take on f5, and this is also hanging right on the next move. So it actually will be, let's say, 3 pawns for the piece in this case, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful, sharp attacking game. Who knows what's going on, but I can also believe that many players will take this position with the white pieces because white's attack is raging, the black king is not safe. Great practical chances for white. So instead of taking on f5 in the actual game, Grischuk plays knight f3. He wants to play it positionally. But now Garry Kasparov starts taking over, folks. He plays knight e4 first. And after takes, here comes my question. Do you recapture this way or this way? A very important question you must answer. What is this position about? It's about attack and piece activity and improvement of our pieces. So you look at the bishop on b7, and of course you take this way because you want to improve this bishop and get this bishop into the attack against the white king. A beautiful, beautiful discovery from Gary. It's of course not difficult for him because if you take with the f-pawn in this position, right, then knight e5 and the bishop is still sleeping. It won't be good for you, right? So d takes e4 is great, and after d takes e4, knight e5 happens, bishop d5, right? Now you understand. Gary wants to improve the bishop directly. And here actually, if you stop the video and tell me whether black has a threat. Black actually has a direct threat after bishop d5. And I want you to discover yourself. What is our threat after bishop d5? What is our next move if white doesn't react? Because white didn't react to this threat in the actual game. Grischuk, a great player, he didn't see the threat. He plays rook h3. And can you see Garry Kasparov's next move, folks? Then you must be great, sharp, attacking Najdorf player. Bam! Yes! Knight takes b2. He wants to directly destroy the white's pawn cover around the white king and go for an attack with the queen and bishop combo, right? Of course, you cannot take this guy because then you just get mated in 2 moves. This was the real threat, you see, after bishop d5, which was missed by white. After bishop d5, the real threat was knight takes b2 followed by queen a3. So the best one for white was bishop d4, and white would keep some advantage in this position, right? It's prophylaxis against knight takes b2. Again, from the white's perspective, you must be a prophylactic player as well, just to stop counterplay. This is also very much in the spirit of Najdorf. In the middle of a sharp battle, you can take some time and prevent the opponent's threats before you focus on your own plan. You see, bishop d5, rook h3, Gary takes on b2, and now it's only a one-sided event from this position because knight a4, right? Well, Grischuk tries h6 on the king side, but for no use because after g6, Gary Kasparov takes one more pawn, rook g8 is coming, and now actually that's the game continuation. Yeah, takes. The white king is still not safe, and things are coming on the queen side very, very soon, like ideas like queen b4, for example. King a1 was tried, and here again, right, Gary just tucks his king on d7. The king is very secure on d7. There is no way for white to attack that king on d7, and he's connecting his rooks. Beautiful attacking game in the Najdorf. And here comes the final phase, rook g2 improvement. Just notice how step by step Gary improves every single piece before the final action begins. Well, black has extra 3 pawns. Black doesn't mind a queen trade and an endgame, so white refuses. Queen h4 looks kind of dangerous, but Gary figured everything out. Rook takes e2. Can you see the point? Rook takes e2, queen a3. Suddenly, right, the a2 point is collapsing. The a2 point is collapsing. The queen joins the attack with tempo on the rook. And yes, you must calculate some lines here after rook g3, but Gary figured everything out, right? Here you're facing some threats, but again, I want you to take your time, stop the video right now, and find the next move for black. Please find the next move for black, folks. Please take your time. Congratulations, if you found Gary's move rook c3, black doesn't care. Black goes for a direct attack on the queen side. The threat is mate in 1. White is helpless defensively, so white must give this check. But of course, Gary figured everything out. Rook c7 check is the only check, king b6. And it transpires that there is no follow-up for white in this position. If you take the rook, then you get mated here. So he tried one more check, bishop d4. But after king takes c7, the checks run out. Queen e7 is not possible because of this. And white resigned in this position because queen takes e2 is coming. An amazingly beautiful, sharp attacking game, don't you think? The key in this game was this moment of d5, trying to activate every single piece, and concrete calculation after queen takes e5. You see, black has to be so careful because white will also, right, throw everything at us on the king side in the center. So concrete calculation is necessary here. And also this moment, right? This f5 moment practically was actually good for black, and white didn't find the key continuation, bishop takes f5. And if white retreats, you see every single tempo is crucial. Here black takes over, right? You see how black takes over initiative, activates the bishop, starts eyeing the white king on the queen side because that's the essence. That's our main target in the middle game like this. And black exploited white's carelessness with a single tempo, right? He didn't see our threat, and the rest was beautiful conversion from Gary Kasparov, who won so many similar games in his chess career to one like this, right? Beautiful calculations, very concrete chess, attacking chess, going directly for the attack on the queen side, while always careful about the opponent's counter chances and not shying away, right, from finding the most ambitious moves as long as he calculates properly. Many of us would shy away. Oh, white's attack is coming on the king side. I'm so scared, right? But he says, you know what? I want to calculate concretely. Give me concrete lines, because once you look at concrete lines, you see that white's checks are running out and black is about to mate the white king on the queen side. Beautiful. We've seen great model games in Najdorf. Now you have a basic idea of what Najdorf looks like at heart, in his spirit. I will now show you typical mistakes I notice in my students' games in the Najdorf pawn structure. This also connects to our typical middle game ideas and pawn breaks, folks. Check this out. In this position, h4 was their last move. The pawn storm is coming on the king side. How should black react? Please stop the video and find the fighting move for black in this position. Congratulations if you found the move d5. It's a central counterpunch, right? They're attacking us on the flanks with moves like h4, and we must react directly in the center of the board with moves like this, right? It's also a move that gets rid of the weakness on d6, don't you think? We had a weak pawn on d6, and this move also gets rid of this pawn, backward pawn on d6, and black gains full equality. In the actual game, black chose this move h6, believe it or not. And of course, black gave white a chance to play g5 and open up the king side completely for his pieces. And now this move comes, and white takes over the initiative. right? So that's a beautiful mistake because black doesn't really understand the gist of this position. The kings, for example, have castle on opposite flanks, right? So it's a pawn storm game, it's an attacking game, so you must really try to activate your pieces, and d5 would do it in a beautiful fashion, folks, right? So this is actually a theme that repeats itself in Najdorf. There are usually, attacks on the king side, they usually attack you on the flank. You should always seek your chances first and foremost right in the center of the board, because you have a central pawn majority, right? You have 2 pawns in the center, so this allows you to push d5 at the right time and change the whole character of the position. That's why Najdorf is a great counter-attacking opening. Talking about pawn breaks in Najdorf, premature or mature pawn breaks, you will decide, because timing is so important with the pawn breaks, folks. In this structure, you tell me which pawn break is a desirable pawn break for black, right? Talking about typical pawn breaks in openings. Yes, this pawn is weak, so d5 pawn break is desirable, right? At some point, we want to execute that move to get rid of a weakness and also to activate our guy on f8, correct? But the question is this a right timing for black to play d5? You tell me. Please stop the video. The answer is no, because your king is still in the center and you need time, you need development to execute this move. How should white punish this break? Well, by attacking, by keeping the momentum going. For example, castle long hits our bishop on d5. You don't want to give up your bishop like that. That's a beautiful piece. So after bishop e6, again, knight c5, white attacks your knight, attacks b7, white puts pressure, white keeps initiative, and if you take that knight, right, that's a big concession to give, and white gets the bishop pair, you can't even castle. You see, this shows that d5 was a wrong timing pawn break, strategically correct, but timing is wrong. And that's also how you should study and learn your openings, by looking at those patterns, recurring patterns in the middle games. And pawn breaks is surely the one that you should study first and foremost, folks. Speaking about the typical pawn breaks in Najdorf, I will show you a beautiful chess classic from Judith Polgar. She was an amazingly strong Najdorf expert as well. In this crazy sharp looking Najdorf structure, folks, please stop the video and tell me a good looking pawn move which activates one of our bad pieces, which gives a beautiful spot to one of our pieces in the position. Yes, typical g5 pawn move, double exclam even, because of its strength, because of its surprise value as well. And now this move actually became stock standard, but look at the idea, right? The idea is obviously to gain this e5 outpost for that knight. As a result of g5, this knight is achieving this amazing, this powerful spot. And after this, Judith actually plays king d7. Another great move, simply guarding the e6 pawn with the king and connecting the heavy pieces like that. So white's attack is actually leading nowhere. And in fact, it's black's attack on the king side, which is just starting. Judith goes h5, a very strong move. Takes, gh5, and now the attack is raging on the king side with g4. This is such a great game, by the way, folks. Even this moment, we have this typical Najdorf idea. Can you find it? Can you find how do you destroy their center in this position? How do you destroy the whole structure for white? Bam! Typical exchange sacrifice, rook takes c3. Why? Because as a result, I take on e4 with tempo, and now every single black piece is coming to the game with great force. And look how Judith Polgar is executing this attack in a beautiful way. Look at the black pieces. There are ideas such as g3. There are other ideas in the position that white is already helpless, actually. So he tried bishop f4, g3. Anyways, beautiful. Opening up the h file with tempo, and now creating a huge threat of rook h1, of course. And the attack is in full force. I will show you exactly how the game finished. Bishop e3, bam, bishop g5. Beautiful tactic, winning the queen, takes, and even at the very end, final precision, the king has no escape square. If you take on e5, by the way, then you get the idea, right? d5 followed by queen h4, a beautiful finish. Beautiful finish. Look how much calculation that actually presents here. Rook h3, hit right knight e6, but after king e6, white resigned because there's no more check and the white king will be mated. Amazing thing about this game, folks, is that the queen, the chess queen, Judith Polgar's queen, is still on her initial square on d8. She executed one of the most amazing attacking games without touching her queen. Amazing, right? Talking about the trumps for black here, I mentioned, right, at some point that black has central pawn majority in the Najdorf. And this can actually become really useful. For example, it's a game of Fiddler of the black pieces, hammer versus Fiddler. They go knight f5. How should black react to this move? You tell me, folks. Beautiful. Take the knight first. And what's the next move? Bam, d5. And now black achieves this beautiful pawn duo in the center, completely takes over the game because of the central control. Plus, as mentioned, c2 pawn is weak. And there are so many ideas like e4, d4 in the air. Black obtains already a much better position with ideas like bishop b6 as well. So this is also a very typical thing that repeats itself that you should be aware of. Such transformations in the Najdorf. You can totally take over the center if they misplay against you. Talking about Najdorf, we must talk about the bishop g5 system, right? Because that's what keeps people away from Najdorf. Because bishop g5 is the sharpest treatment from white, and the game can really go into chaotic directions. That a single slip means it's game over for both sides, actually. But I will also tell you a personal story. I was also a great Najdorf player. I love the opening myself, and I lost so many games against the bishop g5 variation. I also won some nice games against it. And yes, it can be unpleasant to play against. And yes, we must also study our theory there. So that's one of the, let's say, drawbacks of Najdorf, that we have no full control of every single line that we'll get, but we are not living in a perfect world anyways. And I will show you one of my own games in the bishop g5 Najdorf. This was a classical game, which I played with the black pieces. Bishop g5 is obviously this, right? White directly goes for this f4 push. Much more direct approach for white with ideas like queen d2 long castle, and black must be careful. I chose queen b6, the poison pawn variation. If you want to be, let's say, less quiet in your games, then you can also try bishop b7 or knight d7, more popular in recent days. But queen b6 is definitely asking for trouble, but also very ambitious, because I want to really exploit the drawback of this bishop move by hitting the pawn directly, right? So Fischer was a great fan of this line. It was even called now the Fischer variation in the Najdorf. So of course, a single slip from black and the game is over. White simply not focuses on its development, and white sacrificed the pawn for piece activity. And yes, it looks very scary for black. If you take a step back, it looks very scary for black, this variation. And there are so many moves here for white. For example, e5 and f5. He tried e5 against me, much more direct. He's sacrificing the second pawn, but in the process, he's ruining the pawn structure on the king side. And by the way, we are still following the theory. There are so many games, correspondence chess games, real games from this position, full chaos on the board. Obviously, if black survives the middle game, we are winning, because look at white's pawn structure, look at our 2-pawn advantage. But white says the gods have created the middle game before the end game. So that's exactly what makes this line so sharp. I go f5, rook b3, hitting the queen, queen a4. Well, the only move because I want to keep my queen in the game, and white sacrificed the piece. Again, theoretical move, takes, theoretical move knight d6. Sharp, very sharp, right? It's move 19, and we are still following the theory. White sacrificed a piece and a pawn to come here, but look at black's king in the center, right? We have a problem, a small problem. So black should better know what he's doing, otherwise you get destroyed in a position like this. So of course I knew in this position the move queen e4 exists, and after rook e1, which my opponent played instantly, I didn't remember the exact line here, which was actually a danger. So I took a long time to actually figure out the move. I knew that this line existed, so I knew that there must be a solution, but I didn't know it was knight g6 or knight c6 here. After some thought, I played knight c6. And after king f1, which creates a huge threat of moving the bishop and winning my queen, I played bishop e6, only move, right? Bishop h5, again, he's playing instantly, it's move 22. I go rook d8, and he should have played queen e6 in this position, which he missed, because this, actually white gains the piece back. This was my point, but rook f6 actually is a good move for white. After rook d7, he wins the pawn back, and white obtains this position after knight d4, by the way, right? It looks like it's going to be collapse for white, but here white has this move, rook d3, and white doesn't lose material and white ends up in this endgame, right? So he should have gone for this endgame after this move. He actually missed. He actually missed this move after rook d8. He goes queen c7, and from here I actually took over the game. I remember queen c4 check, bishop e2, queen takes c2, and now my king will be actually very secure in this position after takes on b7, just castle short. I was like, whoo, the danger is away, and my king is safe. Queen f4, queen c3, going back and defending my king. Black has an extra piece. White's attack is dying. Queen f6, organizing my pieces. Rook d4s are coming. And here actually, the game actually ended very, very soon. Rook d4, queen e3, rook e4. My rook is actually playing a great role in this game. Extra piece for black, hitting. Bishop c4 check. Knight c2, winning more material. Queen c1, queen b6. And resign because everything is collapsing for white. You see, single slip after rook d8. White had a single slip and there was no turning back. Let's finish up this video, folks. I hope you have a better feeling of what Najdorf is in heart and spirit. A very counter-attacking opening, but a very sound opening. Those players were great Najdorf practitioners, folks. Just look at those, right? I'm sure you know their names. Boris Gelfand, Judith Polgar, Garry Kasparov, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and great Bobby Fischer. They were all great lovers of the Najdorf defense. You might say all these players are crazy, chaotic, sharp players, you know, Kasparov, MVL, Judith. But look at Gelfand. He's a very positional player at heart, strategic player at heart. And he played Najdorf for his entire life with great success. Also shows us, right, Najdorf can also suit those positional and strategic players because of its inherent solidity and the trumps that it presents for black, long-term cards for black, right? And finally, obviously, if you have to make a distinction, right, usually dynamical players, fighting chess, dynamical and fighting players, they prefer Najdorf usually. So when you think about your chess persona, do you fit this style in general? But never forget, it's positionally extremely sound opening. Black has several long-term cards. So even great endgame players like Gelfand, for example, like Fischer, right? They were great lovers of Najdorf and they won so many Najdorf endgames that you can also study those model games. I will, of course, put some great model games in this video description, folks, so you can check those games with your own eyes. And also, calculation skills are pronounced, right? In this crazy middle games, opposite side castle middle games, we saw how important the calculation skill is. So you should really work on that to take the Najdorf to its fullest, folks. Really will benefit you to work on those calculation skills. Need for memorization is actually high compared to Karjakin. Remember, Karjakin was more like a system opening, although there were so many different pawn structures you just need to know by heart. Najdorf, especially bishop g5 lines, some crazy Scheveningen, you know, English attacks. If you go for those lines, then yes, you need to memorize some moves, right? Because a single slip and the game can be lost directly. That's how, for example, they caught Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in the candidates tournament, right? Corona versus MVL. You should check that game out. I mean, Corona made this home preparation against MVL's Najdorf because he always plays Najdorf and he was caught off guard by home preparation. So you should also watch out for these things if you take the Najdorf. And different pawn structures. Remember, e5 move with black is a pure Najdorf structure, but Scheveningen is also possible with e6 and d6 pawns. Garry Kasparov's favorite pawn structures. More flexible, right? But it's on different elements. You're playing for d5 pawn break. You can be flexible and change mind and maybe play e5 at some point. So again, flexibility and richness in terms of pawn structures and middle game play in Najdorf, folks. Pawn storm positions, right? Versus quiet treatments. Obviously, white can also play very quietly, like bishop e2, for example, right? This quiet system. They can castle short, for example. And then we saw in the first game, right, how Fischer was organizing play on the coin side with a minority attack and slow and gradual progress that is showing the long-term cards for black, right? So the game can go both ways, basically. You should prepare for yourself for both kind of strategic battles, actually. And finally, yeah, we talk about pawn breaks, for example, how d6, d5 break should be arranged in a very timely way, right? Sometimes you can make the move prematurely and you can get punished accordingly. So it's also about, you know, understanding about piece activity. How can I play with my pawns to activate my pieces? Also much about, you know, weak squares on d5, for example. That is the core battle in this pure Najdorf pawn structure. I hope you liked this video, folks. Again, I can talk about Najdorf for eternity. I can make 25 videos about Najdorf, but I have to stop somewhere, right? I hope I gave you the gist of Najdorf. Please give me your feedback. Do you like this opening? Do you see yourself playing it? So we can also, maybe I can make more videos about that in the future, maybe some model games. Please give me a like so we can actually reach more people here. For similar content on Chessable, I made a course that is titled The Art of Awakening Pieces. And there I talk about typical pawn breaks, also Najdorf pawn breaks, in relation to piece activity. You can also benefit tremendously from this course. Thank you so much. I'm waiting for your feedback on YouTube. Please write me your comments and I will catch you for the next opening in my series. And please tell me what opening that should be. Bye-bye.